Okay. All right, welcome everybody. We're just gonna give like another minute or so to allow a couple persons to join. Hi Theo, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. We have some early attendees. Great to see all of you. We are about to start streaming our live stream to Facebook. Let's see if we can get on here. We just want to ask if anybody has any questions that you can feel free to drop them in the chat. And also there's Q&A that's available for you to drop any notes or questions that you may have or want to be considered for our broadcast this evening. Awesome. So first of all, I'd like to just say thanks everybody for tuning in and also to my esteemed panelists. I'm such a lucky girl. I get to hang out with these guys at different times just based on being in the tech space and just being able to share genius time with them. So I consider myself quite lucky. And in particular, this evening, we're going to be talking about a solution that is what I consider innovation in motion, and something that I feel is really an example, a true example of what we are capable of creating in an agile way and bringing velocity of a solution to the market in times of great need. So we are going to be taking together a journey upon the ends. And helping with me with that this evening are our guests. We have Andrew Nooks, who is a director at Symptai Consulting. We have Larren Peart, who is the CEO of BlueDot, Sheldon Powe, who's CEO at Innovate 10X, and Christopher Reckord, who is CEO at tTech Limited. And why do we have these guys on? Because they are a key part of the evolution of this project. Now, keep in mind, guys, that there were several other persons involved that are not necessarily represented as a part of this discussion, but this particular conversation is really not meant to kind of do a deep dive into each person's role. It's really to talk about just the way that innovative technology can be brought to the market to support the needs of society and to assist government, and to also bust up some myths that we've seen floating around out there about ENDS, the platform, and anything all and sundry related to that. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to have you. And I'll be sharing just a couple of slides with yourselves and the audience to guide the conversation, because I really want us to land for everybody that's joining tonight or that's going to be watching after, that the process of bringing tech to the market, no matter who you are, it could have been Facebook, Apple, you know, I guess partnerships like this, any type of application that is coming to the market, it has to go through different phases. And the better you are able to actually take the different needs of the society or the customer into consideration and then build that out over time, then the more successful your application will become. And for each person here that's sitting down as a part of this panel, you guys all have experience with that. And in particular, with this instance, you guys are all members of the private sector organization of Jamaica, or the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance. And so I wanted to create that conversation about the evolution, the partnership, the ups and downs involved in that, and just the excitement that this particular project may have created as a way to see solutions that are going to come forward in the future. So we're ready to talk the things. I'm very excited and looking forward to this chat. So let's start off first of all, right, with acknowledging that ENDS really is an application that is having a significantly positive impact on the advancement of the acceptance or the adoption to government systems across, well, we'll see if it's across the island, but island-wide, right? So we'll start off with the need or the problem, because ultimately, you know, that's where everything starts, right? There's a problem that somebody have or many people have, and we think, okay, is there a way that technology can solve this? So the inception of the problem began, I think, several months ago, right, in multiple conversations that the PM may have been having with different organizations. And then when did it land at the feet of PSOJ? And anybody can take that.
I think Chris is best suited to take that one.
Go ahead,
between Sheldon and Chris, I'll start off. Thanks very much for hosting this, Stacey, and thanks everybody for being here and volunteering your time. As we have all been volunteering our time since about February to make this thing happen. So the high-level problem statement was simply this, and it's something that the Prime Minister has repeated over and over and over again, is balancing lives and livelihood. And so his major concern was, how do we restrict the movement of the virus, which equates to restricting the movement of people, and keep businesses still operating, those businesses that would be affected by any sort of curfew. We weren't given any, free prior information as to what curfew measures there were going to be, but this was all pre-Easter. And of course, we know we had some major lockdowns during Easter, but the timeline was very short. And when he spoke to the heads of the various private sector organizations, they kind of came together, short version of the story, and they kind of said, PSOJ President Keith Duncan, you're it. You have access to, we do have Innovation and Digital Transformation Committee in the PSOJ. A number of persons here are members. So you, Stacey, are part of it, representing the Jamaica Technology Digital Alliance. Sheldon Powe is part of it, as being a technologist in Jamaica, and all that. So the fact is that we were presented this problem, and you, Sheldon, got a call from President Keith Duncan same time, and then you called Larren same time. And when you have a situation like this, Stacey, that is just, the Prime Minister of the country calls you, and you have to react and respond. He understands that there's a bunch of entrepreneurs, a bunch of technology entrepreneurs, and you need to come up with a solution that doesn't really exist. And then if you follow government guidelines and to go through a procurement process, it's about a 6 to 12 month process at least, where the problem is happening right now within a week or two. The problem is now. And so it's a private sector. You don't have no restrictions by all of these things. Can you help? What can you do? How can you work with us to solve this problem? Sheldon, giving the button to you.
Well, yeah, I think Larren and I got the call about the same time, and Larren would have gotten the call myself, because both of us worked on the new economy when Favor was in charge of science and technology, and we had the Go Digital project, which PSOJ was big involved in, and everybody else. And I mean, hats off to Larren. Larren has been doing a lot of volunteering work since this COVID came up, and been coming up with a lot of innovative solutions. So, and I get to learn that Keith is somebody that when he calls people in the private sector for long 2-hour meetings, a lot of people seem to respond. So they even feel guilty if you're not even at the meetings. So I think Larren had reached out to Aldwyn. Aldwyn Wayne is the CEO and founder of WiPay, and they are big on e-commerce and payment solutions and all of that. And I'm actually representing WiPay. I have my WiPay and Innovate Connect shirt on. So there are representations here. I'm a director in WiPay. But we heard the problem statement from Keith, and said that we should come up with a solution. Larren, that's the one that took the first batch, and I'm sure he never slept for a couple of days working with WiPay to come up with what a solution could actually look like, right? And Larren, I'll just hand the baton over to you now, to kind of, fill in. I mean, that from your side, how it all started.
Okay, all right. So thanks, Sheldon and Chris and Stacey and everyone, and hi to everyone that's online. So the problem statement is, how do we enable business continuity during a lockdown or during curfew hours? So that was a problem statement, and we immediately went to work in trying to pull together a team of entrepreneurs who could address this problem, as well as to think through all of the stakeholders and how to build out this ecosystem, because prior to this type of solution did not exist. There were e-commerce providers, but there's no central point of for them to be present, as well as the registration part of it, and the curfew, the issuing of the curfew passport was very important as well. So we had to enlist not just technology or the software developers, but we had Symptai come on board through Andrew Nooks and his team to test the application very, very vigorously. I want to point out that in very early on in the discussions, one of the most important things for us was inclusivity and equity for all businesses and for all Jamaicans. So primary focus was not only to get the large QSRs, quick service restaurants on, but we consistently try to figure out how do we get the small businesses, the corner shops, we keep talking about the pan chicken man vendors, soup vendors, etc., online, and understanding that there is a digital literacy barrier. How do we bridge that barrier and facilitate the payments with that cohort of individuals? So a lot of work went into it. We met with several stakeholders, from the BOJ to the Jamaica Bankers Association, several stakeholders, and where we are now is I think we can all say that we're very pleased with it, especially on the social impact side. I remember in the first weekend alone, over 500 employees who for our entire year were not able to work the late shift, were able to work the late shift and have some income. And in Montego Bay, the following weekend when we launched in Montego Bay with the Pan Chicken Men, in the first day, the Saturday on that weekend, close to 500, or for the entire weekend, sorry, close to 500 meals, Pan Chicken meals was sold. So that, in terms of the impact, it was, I'm pretty sure we're all very pleased with that. And the latest figures, as far as I know, is up to 3,000 employees are now employed between Kingston. 3,000 employees are now back to work at the late shift between Kingston, Portmore, and Montego Bay.
So Stacey, let me just add a little.
Before you go, Chris, I noticed Larren dropped the baton. He didn't pass it on.
Larren should hand it over back to you. Yeah.
I can run and pick it up and run with it.
Sorry.
Hi everyone.
David, both on the last leg.
I just want to make sure that David understands that I don't want any sound problems, so that's why I have on my arcade headset. So don't bother with me on that. All right, cool. Hi everyone. Listen, I got the call from Sheldon, and we could sit on. Symptai could sit on the sideline and decide that, boy, listen, we're going to watch and see what happens first. But we jumped in and we said, listen, we're going to see as best as possible how we can help to bring security and privacy into the mix of this application. And I called on the team, Rory, our director of information security, and his team jumped in just about the same time, and we went to work first, looking at what was there and making some suggestions as to the design and doing a threat model and looking at where things could possibly go wrong, and made some input into how we could start changing some things in the design. And so that's just to note that this is still work in progress. I know, and I think we'll get to that, sometime later on in the discussion, but work is still going on making this a wholesome project. Back to you, Stacey.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. So I get to, I'm at the place of I'm clear on the path from the need to the ideation piece, and we're going to talk about prototyping in a second. Chris, you were going to add something?
I was just going to throw that the solution that Sheldon and Larren came to the table with when we we actually had to present to the Prime Minister and the subcommittee from the cabinet very, very early. This is when the ideas were still being formed. We had to throw out what we knew then to see if they would bite. And so back then, and why I want to explain this is just to show how this evolves, right? And I've done at least a dozen radio and TV interviews around this whole thing. And so you know you're gonna jump on some of it because you talk about some of the myths and some of these things that they're asked, the questions that they're asking. Journalists are being journalists, you're trying to dig a little deeper. This misunderstanding of what they think was there, apparently. And I said, folks, there was no requirements documentation, right? There was just a sentence, and then a bunch of folks just came
RDB and your SDB and all that.
Right, there was none of that stuff. I mean, and so when Larren and Sheldon and Peart and us sit down and said to the Prime Minister, so look, members of the cabinet, what we need to do to get this thing going is find some way the Prime Minister asked the question, to build a delivery economy, find some way to give access and give a passport, and I don't remember who came up with the whole COVID passport idea, but to give that whole industry an ability to move around. And then you get the next question, but what about this? And of course, the police ask questions, and then this has questions. So every time that 5 questions come up, we have to huddle again, brainstorm again, and then of course, we have our security person keep on keeping us in check, right? The guy who keeps bunging us over the head, no, you can't do that because so at the end of the day, Stacey, this was moving, and I'll use what one member of parliament said. The idea was presented, and then all of us was pushed out of the plane, and we had to build a parachute before we hit the ground. And that's what this was all about.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen just a little bit because I have just 2 slides that I'm going to be referring to as we go through the conversation. So the first slide that you'll be seeing is one where I've kind of specced out the stages of what we are calling innovation in motion. And this is typically the path that you'll see most software applications take, right? So you start off with a need or problem. In this particular instance, we have a pandemic-induced economic challenge, right? That is being experienced. And I can tell you that I used to have anxiety when I see the time coming up to curfew and know, say, I never cook no dinner. And I'm trying to figure out how am I going to feed my family, right? Or even instances where you want to go to like the pharmacy. I remember in the early conversation, because if you guys recall, on the day where where you guys presented to the Prime Minister that night, I think it was the Friday evening you were presenting, that morning, there was a meeting of the subcommittee, the PSOJ Innovation and Transformation Subcommittee, and myself representing JTDA, where we're actually kind of doing a test run for the discussion and exercising some of those questions. So even before it got to presenting to the PM, we had another discussion, and all of this is happening very quickly. So we're not going through an RFP process, which is a request for proposal. We're not going through and trying to toss out for everybody to bid, and then we can go through another 3 months of selection and testing. No, because we need to solve the problem now, right? And this was back in February, right? So at the end of February, we're having huddles and conversations. You guys are having your deep dives, and I even recall a whole discussion about the way the platform was going to be connected and who was going to own the platform, and all of these things that still hadn't been worked out before the meeting with the Prime Minister that night. So when you're moving from this need or problem stage to ideation and prototyping, there is quite a bit of activity that happens very quickly, right? So it's not that you're not trying to also be diligent, but you are getting back to this, right? Especially when you have something that's urgent, which Larren, you would know about, by doing the citizens response work with many players, including government last year when the pandemic was ensuing, right? So what I wanted to get a sense of is, as we were coming in, having that meeting with the Prime Minister and moving into now a prototyping stage, when you started to now pull the pieces together and say, okay, we need to build a prototype, right? What was the thinking that was going on in your mind, Larren? Because you're carrying this on your shoulder now, right? Because you've been given the baton. And I know that just based on our meeting, you still had several question marks going on, right? So what was the thinking behind, all right, we need to get going. What's the fastest way to get something up and running so we can have a prototype that we can test and make sure that we're headed in the right direction?
Right. So what ENDS is now is a very much scaled down version of the grand idea that that
Yes.
that I had. I don't know if you remember that presentation.
I remember it.
Yeah, man. But I'd gone way I'd gone way left field with a whole bunch of stuff, which I think we'll still get to. Back on the topic of inclusivity, one of the things that we had discussed that I was, that I and some other members of the team were batting for was to Uberize the taxis.
Yes.
To get the cost of delivery down and have the route taxis deliver,
Yes.
Which is still an option. I know Minister Montague really wants.
And it's still needed.
And
I was wondering about that because I really did like the taxi part. I thought that was quite innovative. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. I think we'll still get to it, because we need to bring the, to bring the cost of delivery down so that everybody can afford to have, goods delivered.
And also, not to cut you up, and also to get it into some of the more rural areas.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So the thinking there was, the big question was was how do we scale this? Because the more you get outside of Kingston is the less quick plate, Seven Craves, etc. logistics providers there are. So, having that as a problem is, how do you then solve that problem, and Uberizing the taxes is how that is solved.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that, when we go island wide and with that scenario. But to answer your question, like, it was very intense and we had to get something delivered. So I had reached out to several providers, WiPay being one of them. Luckily, WiPay already had a solution built out for the curfew, the QR code piece, right? When we had just pitched to the Prime Minister, the discussion then was around giving the riders a physical badge or some sort of vest that the police would be able to identify them with.
Okay.
But then this being fully digital, we said, well, why not just give them some type of digital passport? And that's how the curfew passport came about, and using QR codes as validation. But back to your question, it was really gathering a team of people, and later on eGov came on board, and they've done very, very tremendous work. But bringing the WiPays, other developers, Symptai, later on we have some extremely important input from Real Decoy and some other individuals, Innovate, 10X, etc. But like Chris said, we really jumped out of the plane and built it on the way down. And while all of this were happening, we had to ensure that MOH would not put a stop to this. So the other problem statement is, how do we facilitate this economic activity without increasing the spread or compromising the spread anymore? And then we also had several meetings with the JCF and the assistant commissioners. How do we ensure that this is safe and secure? And does the police have the bandwidth to monitor all of this? So all of that, it was, we had meetings with local government, Minister McKenzie, like all a whole bunch of meetings just to really figure out how to get this work and define what an MVP is and how to get the MVP going and in what fashion.
Wow. So it sounded like you guys were all on the battlefield, like working it out day and night. I recall having conversations with persons that will remain nameless who are also on this panel, talking about how them up late working on ends, right?
Let me add to some of what Larren said, because we, you know, I think, you know, Larren actually truly innovative. Then Keith brought me on and said I should bring some structure to this thing. And I said, Keith, we do have the developers, right? But we need, I said I would give you from 10x quality assurance. And I told him I'd give him project management as well, right? And then I said I could try and talk to Symptai about security.
Right.
So, and I said, well, I also need a business analyst.
Yes.
And Keith said, well, we have Jelani from POSOJ who could act as a business analyst. I said, well, look, we have our complete team then. Now, truthfully, when I started and I, you know, tried to 10x, we're doing this thing and blah, blah, blah. I said, but Sheldon, there's no revenue to this. So you're tying up 3 people
Resources.
to do this. So I go back to Keith and I said, Keith, I can't give a project manager, you know. I committed to the QA and I have 2 people for the QA, right? But the project management, I can't do it. And I said, you know, we need to have a little budget for this thing. So can we have a little budget? So he said $1 million Jamaican dollars. And I said, all right. So far, Nooks said, boy, you know, we're doing it for the pan chicken, man. So I'm cool. And I tell him that, you know, nobody else was being paid. So he was good. But we couldn't find a project manager for free. Everybody's saying project manager is in huge demand.
Yes.
So I think that resource was actually the only paid resource that was actually on the project. And I think Jeff is in the audience. Jeff from Reckord. I called him as well and said, boy, the country needs a favor from you. And Jeff was ready to rally up his entire team and join in this and so we did some all-nighters, you know, and Andrew's a man, him down the road again, and then like him sleep from about 9 p.m. And several nights we had Andrew. Sometimes I meet him 2 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. in the morning on a regular basis. Right?
Oh, wow.
I'm glad to see my virgin Andrew Nooks right now, because he said him don't know what road again, night to get him sleep and all of that. But we're really putting a lot of work, a lot of us putting a lot of work.
Yes.
To make this happen. And we did, as I said, have a complete team. So it's not only developers through the WiPay, the security, the quality assurance, the project manager, the business analyst working. So while we're in meetings, we're writing down the MVP requirements and all that and sharing it. And sometimes it was a bit late. Maybe it's not even up to date right now, but we did try, you know. We by the time Jeff came, Jeff really structured us in terms of you know, making sure we're using a lot of the tools for Agile in terms of managing the backlog better and all of that. Ego put together a very competent team to work along with us, because we were actually given a date in which we were supposed to hand over the development to eGov. And it was like from WiPay to eGov was like probably over a weekend.
Wow.
And WiPay did kind of work through like, you know, everything they didn't understand. And I told him, I said, look, I know you guys in taking over some of this code. You're gonna critique it all you want.
That's always tricky, right?
Yes,
and I see Aldwyn has joined, which I'm really excited about, because and Jeff, I'm gonna bring on Aldwyn for a few minutes to talk about WiPay's experience as a part of it, which is great. So I think that's actually really key when you talk about the transitioning of code, because even now when in private sector, when you're dealing with outsourcing an application, right? And you're like, okay, well, we now want to, you know, change our contractors. It's like you almost have to start from scratch. It's just, you know, so there's a whole process that, you know, software development goes through on the back end, but you have to make sure that on the front end that the experience of it is still, you know, seamless as you move through the different phases.
And Stacey, if I might add, it wasn't as smooth as it seems now that we're talking about it.
Well, me no say no smooth.
Because let me tell you something. You know, even on some nights, you know, it's a good thing this thing virtual, you know, because you know when we start having our different pushes and pulls, you know, from you know our own perspectives. Some of those things could really come to fist blows if we're in the same room, possibly. But no. But it was good banter and stuff, and it brought some things to light. You know, when you're looking at software development, there's a business side and there's a technology side. There's a security and the data privacy, and you know, data security and privacy are sometimes seen as showstoppers. Right? Boy, listen, Larren will tell you. You guys, you can't do this. You can't push this update. You can't do that because of this is the situation. And then the business will come in and say, listen, man, risk happens every day.
Yes.
And stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I have to, you know, we have no problem with risk. We have no problem with risk. All we want to know is who is the risk owner? When things blow up, who's going to stand up and say, boy, I am the risk owner? You know what I mean? So there was always
you're triggering the anger. Was it bringing back some very tense moments there of anxiety?
Yeah, man.
As the business owner, everybody looking to me and Sheldon and said, Larren, you have to either you pull the plug or you say go. And those were some tense moments. But yeah, man.
Yeah, man. It was quite interesting. You know, I made quite a few calls with Chris and saying, Chris, boy, listen, I don't know how this thing is going on because, you know, but it was a great learning experience and a great balance. The team eventually, you know, pulled a lot of things together and stuff like that, you know.
Okay. So I have promoted you to panelist. Aldwyn, you can turn on your camera and your mic. So that we can hear you. We do have I do have a couple of questions for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Give me a second with the camera. My country manager just told me to join this thing. You know, I didn't realize I was going to be on our panel. He's like, yo, join this thing.
All right. So what we can do is I can maybe ask you the question a couple of questions in the meantime, and we can just continue the chat because it's really about the evolution of N. So we're just kind of taking it in pieces and parts. So I can start the banter with you for sure if you're sorting out your things. So when you got the call from Larren, because what we're talking about now is the actual, you know, evolution of the innovation itself. So when you got the call from Larren, you know, what was the thinking? Was it like, oh my gosh, you know, how are we going to pull this off? Or, you know, were you just really excited about the possibility that was being created?
Well, honestly, at the point in time when we got the call, it was just to help Larren with a solution. So the full scope of, you know, what was going on in terms of the POCJ and, you know, the whole project, you know, at that point in time, I was not involved with that at that point. I got a call from Larren about, you know, a solution that he wanted to build.
Yes.
He was looking at, and you know, at that point in time, you know, the focus was heavily around, you know, just winning. You know, that's our motto at WiPay. You know, you need something in 2 days, we figure it out and we build it for you. So I worked with Larren before on a project with Rada sometime last year in May, I think it was. So again, the call was, you know, about software development, and you know, that was right up our alley. So in terms of the scope, what it was for, at that point when we had that initial conversation, you know, it was more about just delivering a solution based on what Larren was telling me.
Yeah, no, totally get that. Now, once you actually got into the mix of seeing what was actually being created, because the truth is that the problem was a significant problem. And as we were discussing just before you joined, you know, there were multiple aspects that were necessary to bring this solution to the table. And so, you know, became a part of this team that was working nights and weekends, you know, to bring the prototype of this solution so that you guys could test it and determine, okay, what does an MVP look like? So what were some of the learnings that you had when you were going through that process now? So after you get the call and you're like, okay, so this is the initial scope, and when you get in there and you're starting to work on it, what were some of the lessons that you were learning as a part of that process?
So our involvement was in the initial stages. So I could give you from, my point of view and my team's point of view.
Sure.
Yeah, we came in, from the, again, that early stage before it had, weeks and weeks of the late nights, with
Okay.
with the rest of the team. We had probably the first 2 weeks of late nights, and then I think we handed it over, and when the rest of the team spend, most of the late nights getting that framework around that MVP product that was delivered. So when we got involved, I would say the initial concept was, what was it, Larren? A national delivery network, which was built around a concept of getting taxi drivers to move goods and services,
Right.
instead of moving people. I think that's Lauren's phrase right there. Let's move goods and services instead of moving people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how he explained it to me. I think actually that first time I was driving from country to town, and it's a 3-hour drive, and we probably covered that entire trip because his focus was on trying to get the project up using that taxi delivery method, and I was trying to convince him to use something else that's focused on e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that whole trip I was with my wife, and we didn't speak the entire time because I was focused on trying to get my point across to Larren. But again, this is early stages. This was before any code hit paper. Right?
I hope that the wife never too vexed by the time you reach home.
No, she's accustomed to it.
Okay.
I jumped on this call 10 minutes ago, and we was actually in the middle of dinner, and I got a WhatsApp from Kibwe, and it's like, dude, you need to be on this thing. I'm like, what?
No.
And then you promote me to the panel, so I put a t-shirt on so I could put on my camera. So anyway, so that's where we were involved. Larren, had that national delivery network idea.
Yeah.
And he told me that from his discussions, they wanted a way to identify people who should be outside during curfew.
Mm-hmm.
And then I shot him a video that we did for the mayor in Trinidad, where we use QR codes to identify recipients of a grant program.
Right.
And he's like, yes, that's what we want. Let's do that. Let's give people QR codes. And that's pretty much the concept that he came up with when we kind of just like went back and forth. How do you identify someone out there without a yellow jacket? Because I think that was the initial concept. And so he saw it, he liked it. And that's the first framework around, giving people a curfew passport with a QR code. That's how it came about.
Okay, excellent. Love that, Aldwyn. And as a follow-up to that, right, I think one of the things that has come to light out of this experience is that, government's typical way of engaging vendors like yourselves, who are all providers, right, would have been through a much more arduous and lengthy process. Like, I can pretty much tell you that since that first meeting that was from February 25th, I think it was, when I was in that first meeting, till now, we would still be at probably RFP stage. We wouldn't have hit actual budgeting and budget approval stage as yet, right? So we would be probably, nowhere close to having even a prototype or anything like that. So when you think about, the way that this was jump-started, so what I would say is that WiPay was the jump-start, right, to kind of get the thing moving along. What will it take for Caribbean governments? And, you know, I think everybody can chime in on this. What will it take for Caribbean governments to really take advantage of this type of partnership, this type of even collaboration across islands? What will it take for governments to take advantage of this in a way that delivers solutions quickly and not necessarily through what is the traditional means, because technology evolves at such a fast rate? And I'll ask Aldwyn to just answer that question first, especially since you are, you know, you're in Trinidad and doing work over there, and also have no experience this project.
Sure, and that's a fantastic point, and I would actually answer that question with something that we're doing right now. So Project 1000, where we've worked with you know, government agencies. Now it's in 5 countries. We just have the ministers in Grenada, Minister of ICT and Minister of Technology, announcing that Grenada is now part of Project 1000. We had the MPs in Trinidad. We had Mia Motley's brother in Barbados, working with to announce the same thing. What we have found, and this is WiPay, you know, 3 years of existence, and working with both private and public sector agencies, is you know, they're not cut from the technology cloth as most of, you know, us are. They want to see it in action, and that's different from, you know, traditionally how technology is and was introduced to the region. You know, normally you would do a presentation, you have to pay, you know, some money up front, and then you get the product installed. Our approach, and it's been working for us so far, you know, we are in with government in Trinidad, CorPay in Trinidad, government in Guyana, Civil Aviation Barbados, CorPay in Barbados, is to give them the solution. Let them play with it, let them see it over a period of time, no cost. Make sure that they feel comfortable with the technology, get for the user requirements, build a product that they would be proud of, let them own that product, charge maintenance or management of a solution, rather than you know, try to build a product that they think they might like and spend 6-7 months trying to figure out if this is actually what they need. So giving that MVP solution, that minimum viable product, as a way of getting the people that are the decision makers the ability to see firsthand how the solution will work, I think is proved successful for us. And again, you know, we've been doing it in a number of Caribbean countries, and with this newest project, Project 1000, it's working the same way for us right now. So I think that's the pivot that we need to make in the Caribbean. You see it happen in first world countries a lot, where, you know, they put their money up front, they build, you know, solutions, have it tested or worked as an alpha or beta product, and then once it's production ready, then it's sold or rolled out. So I think that's an approach that we could take in the Caribbean to get better government cooperation.
Okay, great. I'll toss it over to Larren now for your insight on that.
So public-private partnerships work, in my opinion, or can work, in my opinion. So I think, you know, for this, the approach was from an entrepreneurial approach. You know, how do we get out the gate as quickly as possible by, you know, rapid prototyping or rapid development, right? So that's what happened. It also helped that I think all of us on the team, you know, Chris, Andrew, Sheldon, everyone else, there was a sense of patriotism, I think, because we understood what the problem was, how it affected especially the most vulnerable. And, you know, because of that, you know, there was a sense of urgency, and you know, we gave up our time to get this solution going, you know, so that also helped. And, you know, both Andrew, Symptai, Innovate 10X, and tTech committed a lot of hours to it for that reason. But I think from my own personal point of view, you know, projects need some sort of an entrepreneurial drive, Projects of this scale need an entrepreneurial drive. Get an entrepreneur in there who has built solutions and does a lot of creative thinking, and that's when things get off the ground.
Yes. Oh, excellent. Anyone else on the panel want to chime in?
I just want to add something here. Andrew Nooks and I are directors within eGov, and we have spoken about this and spoken to Anika Shuttleworth as well. Because in the private sector, when the government has an initiative that we see the immediate benefit to the nation, to us Jamaicans. I mean, I think the first time that ENS was launched, I think between Chris and I were one of the first users. I really was very happy to order some pan chicken night, and I ordered from a Bridge, and I had a Bridge about Portmore, and I ordered pan chicken for him as well. And so what's the big deal? I said I ordered it from our website, But we are very willing, and I've spoken, really Carl was the same thing. I've spoken to other members of the Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance that says where the government has had a need for help in terms of capacity or competence, those technical capability, we are actually willing to come on board. I mean, it's limited but free of cost, especially we can see the benefit to our own people. So what would happen is that, and then in the speaking about it with the eGov so far, they're very open to it. So it's something that I would like to work on formalizing, right? Right. So a lot of the initiatives, because government has a backlog of so many things they want to do in creating a digital society. And we see the link that, boy, if the more digital becomes, companies like mine will actually get more business because the digital literacy would be up. So even if I was thinking from straight, not even nationalism and patriotism, but even from a straight capitalist perspective, there are projects that we should be working on, which will actually create the capital that we need in this country. And I know that working with you, our president right now for the Alliance, we can probably put a formal proposal to eGov as a whole, this kind of a partnership can actually work even better than, because we really stumbled upon it and it actually did work. So let us now formalize it and see. And of course, like a WiPay, which is a global company, and has already demonstrated that they're willing to support initiatives like this, will definitely be on board with something like that.
Awesome.
From the for a second. From the perspective as eGov makes its transition to the ICT authority, I see a lot of opportunities to modify some of the ways of how government does business in the ICT sector. For instance, of standards relating to innovation and the setting up of standards relating to partnering with private entities for services that and expertise that the government may not be able to attract as employees of government. That could go a far way in terms of providing the kind of input that is necessary for projects just like this. So, I mean, with government, there can be a lot of red tape, for want of a better expression. But if the framework is already in place, if the standards are set and it's communicated pretty much like the formal public-private partnership to extend things like that into the ICT sector and ICT expertise, it would be a push in the right direction. So that is something that I think ought to be explored.
Okay, indeed. Chris, anything to add, or are you good?
Well, Jeff has a excellent point he made in the chat, and I think it should be expanded. And I say Larren replied to it. So Jeff said, government procurement processes are designed to ensure that procurement is fair and can demonstrate value for taxpayer dollars. To execute on this takes time to do properly. In this case, volunteers were engaged and intellectual property vested in the government, which removed the need for taxpayer dollars so it could move quickly, but it is fragile without infrastructure to support it. So, when he said that, and then I started pondering to myself, I say, how do you formalize this? How do you how do you, or even not fully formalized, because if you make it fully formalized, you get back
Yes.
into bureaucratic situation.
Exactly.
So how do you create this very, that's, you know, loosey-goosey framework, but something that is there, because, you know, we have created this sort of an unofficial public-private partnership, because there is an official framework for public-private partnership. There's an official policy and laws around that. But this is what happens when entrepreneurs get involved. You just shut it down the road, you jump out the plane and you build. So there is some thinking that we need to do, that the Alliance needs to do. We've been approached by a number of different part of the MDAs, ministries, departments, agencies, the government of Jamaica, around answering a number of questions. And I think we can be the ones to architect and push, as Sheldon, you know, saying a while ago, but both him and Andrew are part of eGov governance. So to propose a way forward for certain type of projects like this. But this is where now we have to now figure out, how do you keep out the, how do I say it politically correct? How do you,
the red tape?
No, not red tape.
Chris, you're not known to be politically correct.
Yes, I know, but when something is being recorded and it's going to be put on social media later, as the one who's been speaking to the media about this thing most of the time, I've learned from some practitioners. Yeah, but you do have unsavory characters who want to come in and infiltrate whatever you're doing, right? So, you know, because government is the biggest spender in any economy, so somebody's going to come try to create something fake and then perhaps go do it, because we have seen, Andrew, I know you have seen this, a fair amount of social media e-commerce shops pop up out there
that aren't real.
That aren't real.
That's crazy.
Money. So I'm using that as an example to say, whilst this worked, it kind of worked because nobody didn't do anything about it, right? And all of us put it in Sheldon, you know, Andrew, Larren, with the goodness of our heart, Aldwyn, with the goodness of our heart, just pouring into it, doing it, and then when it popped up and everybody saw it working, then let me tell you.
The attention.
Larren knows, Sheldon knows, Andrew knows, Stacey, the amount of phone calls, the amount of angry phone calls that I've had to field from existing players who didn't understand what we're doing.
Yes.
And then when you say, guys, we're gonna have a meeting, and then they go on social media and watch your comments, and you have to just look and smile and say,
smile and nod.
Nothing. We're gonna have a meeting tomorrow, we're gonna explain to you shortly. And then we finally come and say, ladies and gentlemen, and Larren explained, you know, very, very nicely a while ago. We had this BHAG vision, but then the BHAG turned into a, I don't know, what's opposite of BHAG? I don't know. but
it's an MVP. That's what it is.
Right,
you have an MVP and you have a pilot, and now your pilot is out there piloting and doing what it's supposed to do. And eventually, depending on what the market needs, it will end up probably beyond the BHAG. And
then where we end up right now is that ENDS is a registration. All it is a registration for people who want to operate during curfew hours. That's it. Yes. Right? That's it. Okay. But you get calls. You guys are stepping into our industry. Why is the government doing this? Chris, I don't understand. You're an entrepreneur. Why are you allowing the government to do this? I'm like, that's not what it's all about. Entrepreneurs always get the bad rap. I said to them, and I said to some of these people, you want to jump in and help? Because everyone else here is giving up their time. Yes. You want to help? And when you say that, Sheldon, you know, interesting thing, what do you mean? So, we mean free? Media calls. What's investment? And I say, you sure you want to hear this answer? Yes. I say, how much is the government investing? I say, you sure you want to hear the answer? I say, zero. The reporter gets quiet. I said, what do you mean zero? I said, no, the government is not investing $1 in this. And they get confused because that is enormous. So we have done something. It has been massively successful, regardless of what all the naysayers out there wanted to say. And we need to figure out exactly what Sheldon and well, Andrew will go back to the drawing board and try to figure out with their the rest of their board. How do we move something like this forward? Jeff also made another point around some sort of a joined up, what do you call it? I don't know, I can find it. But, you know, rallying volunteer citizen program community. He rattled off a few of these things. I think Marlon had asked him a question around it. Yes. Right. So, you know, we've done something interesting and we need to figure out how to maximize its value.
Right. No, great points, guys. And Aldwyn, I'm very very cognizant of time with you. So I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on, and to wish you luck with your 1,000 project. I don't even know if I'm saying that right.
Project 1,000.
Project 1,000, right.
Yeah, it's a Guinness World Record attempt. So, hey, bud. Yeah, give me a sec. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't prepared for this.
No problem.
I'm gonna keep windy head as soon as I get to Jamaica when all the open back the borders. I see you guys just banned Trinidad from coming to Jamaica. So,
I didn't know that.
you have about a month before you kick in your head.
No, this was good, Aldwyn. I was actually happy that you were going to be able to join, having been the person on the other end of the phone. And I'll definitely be talking with you guys about the moves that you're making towards the different islands, you know, as we consider what we will be creating locally from a proposal perspective to say how we can have the next ends and the next ends and the next ends. So thank you so much for joining at short notice.
I really do appreciate you guys having me. All right, bye guys.
Bye, take care. All right, guys. So continuing on with the conversation, right? I wanted to just kind of touch back on where we are in the process, and then we're going to move into some myth busters. All right, so we talked a bit about the ideation and prototyping, and Aldwyn joined to talk a bit about that. And then we kind of didn't really get so much into the MVP, but one of the things here that I wanted to bring to light is where it talks about a focus on releasing an MVP means that the developers potentially avoid lengthy and unnecessary work. What I want to make sure that we are clear on is that despite this particular statement here, which is true of many MVPs, there was no skimping on the security and making sure that we were observing, you know, the needs from a legal and privacy perspective, right? Now, before we were joined by WiPay, one of the things that was discussed was kind of the banter that went on back and forth when, you know, you had different sides coming in about things. Do you think that it's ever a mistake or a potential delay to a project to put on hold certain security aspects? And that's a really critical question, because we have some trust rebuilding that we have to do as a nation as it relates to technology like this that is touching the society. You know, how important is this, regardless of whether or not it's going to slow down getting the product out?
Stacey, I'll jump in on that. Think about building a house without making any allowance for windows, doors, electricals, water, and whatever other infrastructure that you have. And you probably didn't even remember to put steel within it. And then you decide that, listen, this house is not going to hold up to any kind of scrutiny and stuff. And then you decide to go back and retrofit. You start trying to put in the steel after the fact, after you have poured the cement. You start trying to put in the electricals. You have to do a lot of digging and a lot of rebuilding. And chances are, in trying to do that, the whole foundation will possibly crumble right in front of you. And then you have to start rebuilding. So you ask the question, how important is it to get security and privacy at the outset? Well, you know, we talk about privacy by design and we talk about security by design and building these things into the DNA. You have to come to from concept to deployment and operation. Security ought to be involved in that. So when you come up with the idea of how things are supposed to work, the security person or the privacy person has to say, okay, so what are we doing about this? And you know, from a requirements perspective, or in an agile world, persons will come up with user stories. Well, our job as security practitioners is to come up with the attacker stories. So as a user, I want to use the system in this way. And that the security engineer will come up and say, as an attacker, I want to abuse the system in this way.
Has ends been abused?
We have done some abusing of ends, and we have abused ends in some ways. But the important thing to know is that no system is going to be 100% secure. And what you will have to look at is to strike that balance between the security and the operational value of the system. Like a few years ago, we did an investigation and a company was losing millions of dollars because of some fraud. And one player was saying, listen, we need to shut this system down. Another player, the executive making the decision walked in the room and he said, how much money are we making from the system on a day-to-day basis? And the person responded, let's call a figure 10 billion. How much money are we losing from the system? Well, we're losing less than 1% of the system. Then are we willing to shut down a $10 billion for less than 1% of loss? Let's insure for the loss. Let's treat with the risk. And that's what we have to do. We fix everything? Do we fix every bit of thing that comes up? Or do we make a note of these things, look at the value that the system is going to add overall, and make a decision on that? Unfortunately, the security practitioner is not usually the person that makes that decision. They will influence the decision by coming up with informing the business owners what the potential risk and potential impact for those risks being realized. And the business owner now has to evaluate that risk in the context of what the business is trying to accomplish. And based on that, they will make a decision. We're going to accept this risk, we're going to mitigate the risk, or we're going to find some other kind of treatment for the risk. And we're going to go ahead. Or this risk is significant enough for us to stop. And I think this team has made the decisions around the risks that were significant enough for things to hold back on some releases and push forward with others. And that is how it's going to be in any software development lifecycle. But just to answer your question directly, is that it pays to have security and things like privacy built in. We're talking about DevSecOps with privacy engineering in the mix. All right, so not just DevOps, where you're developing and operating the system, but you're bringing in security into the middle of that. And now with privacy laws all over the globe, you have to bring in privacy engineering into that mix. That looks at what data you're capturing, and is it necessary for you to be capturing all of that data? Or how the system will integrate and with other systems, and how it hand off, and what information is handing off, and do we get the necessary consent? Are we going to call it the necessary consent for that kind of handoff and use?
Awesome, thank you for that. I just wanted to read a comment from Jeff where he says, typically the security analysts identify risks and mitigation strategies, but it is impossible to remove all risks, which I'm clear about. Someone has to make the call as to what is acceptable. And in a coalition of volunteers, you run into the challenge of who actually makes that call. This was a big challenge on this project, right? So at the end of the day, it was almost democratic. Are you willing to put your name on this? And I just want to underscore that point, that it's not just about the risk side of things, right? Because when we were having that initial conversation, that's the question I raised. When Larren was presenting the idea, and he was like, boy, we need to have an owner that says, I am the product owner. And I know that has evolved since the initial conversation. Larren or Sheldon or Chris, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, actually, I want to just follow, because Andrew and I mean, you want to describe that we would have gone to blows if we're physically in the room, but that wouldn't have happened. Let's make that clear. But Larren and I were named as the business owners. And what I liked about Andrew's approach to risk and security is that he took the time, and with all of the security risks that he found, to explain it to us properly. And I think that was very important, because oftentimes we hear about security risk, and because you don't understand it, you're like, in some instances, no, we can't go live with this particular security risk because it's a security risk. And there are people on the team that says all security risks must be addressed. And I said, no, right? We need to look and understand the security risk, and so we're actually willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
No, I just want to mention the Jam COVID application, because we know that there would have been people out there trying to bring down this application based on the past experience of that particular one. And one of the suggestions, I think it was Andrew came up with it, that with the geofence this application to make sure that only if you're actually physically in Jamaica, you can actually use the application. So all those people who idle all across the world that would have wanted to come in and bring down the system, that was one way that we, and Andrew said I should share that they were not been able to address, to come in. But the point is that, let me tell you what was happening. I didn't realize that I became one of those people that ministers started to call me and were putting me under a lot of pressure. And I'm sure Larren, whatever pressure they put me on, I think the problem can get you and them call me. And the amount of time them call me, I can imagine the amount of time that them call you and Chris as to when them get the application. And then sometimes now, I remember one time telling Andrew, I'm going to put you on the Zoom call with the minister early in the morning. Andrew said, no problem doing that. And sometimes we're meeting with them, I think 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to meet again at 12 o'clock. I don't want to meet again at 5 o'clock. As far as they're concerned, when they review certain things and give feedback, we expect by 12 o'clock, it will be resolved. And then by 5 o'clock. And then we have all of these security issues. Now, for me, there's a certain minimum amount of security that has to go with any minimum viable product, right? And I mean, you know, Andrew was acting like doing other penetration testing and hacking, and you know, he would have shown in some cases that he would have been able to break into the application, right? I mean, so we have to act like a hacker on how what they would do, and then when we find these vulnerabilities now, we have to close them down. So we did a lot of that, and of course there are certain things in terms of access control that we'd have to pay attention to. And you know, just how the data catch out and what information do we really take, you know, if we do we really have to take it, for example. So at the end of the day, I'm very happy that what we're left with. Of course, we still have some security risk, but we believe those are some in which the effort in which a hacker would have to take to break the system is not worth the reward. At the end of the day, there's no money being given from the system, right? So I would have learned a lot from doing it, because this was also an opportunity where, let me just say, there's WiPay, there's tTech, there is BlueDot, there's Reckord, there's Symptai, there's Innovate 10X, and there's
Get there as well.
Get there.
Yeah.
Right. We're all working together, and some people even know each other, and we're working together. So of course there's gonna be, farming, storming, norming and performing. So I mean, we went through all of those stages, right? We had a lot of healthy discussions around security. I mean, in terms of the quality, I mean, we also have to make sure we have a functional system. So we even had to look, there are a lot of things that I know the public is looking at as a why this feature not in there and all that. Because even from that perspective, we have to limit the amount of functions that we want. We make sure that you can register. If you make a mistake in your registration, there's actually not a way to correct it. You probably have to phone somebody, have them correct in the back end. But those are the kind of things that you'd have to decide on when you're trying to launch a minimum viable product. But then as the weeks go by, because every week there's a backlog, and we probably look at the security issues, we look at what are our features we want, and then we keep on.
Yeah.
And
Stacey, I want to raise an important point here, because Chris mentioned this is a registration system, but it also contains a landing page for some of the vendors and service providers. And what we want to make sure that persons understand is that when they click and they go to some other site, then the security of those sites were not validated in this process, because that is seen as an external site, and those companies would have taken the necessary steps to protect their systems and infrastructure. So I wanted to make that also very clear.
No, that's a good point. Thank you for that. We're getting, just comments from the audience about, from the persons who are attending, just about their excitement around and just, the appreciation of the collaborative effort that has been put forward by this group of people. I hope I didn't forget anybody. But everybody's name is listed in alphabetical order, I think, if I can say my alphabet properly. But just pointing out that, this wasn't a one-man show, this wasn't just PSOJ, or this wasn't just Innovate, 10X, or any one person. This was a collaborative effort. And anything that is really done very well is typically a collaborative effort. You know, even if you start off with 2 matches stick holding it up in the back, because as an entrepreneur, that's what you do. At least that's how I certainly start out most of my things. And everybody here can, you know, kind of attest to that. You start off with just the bare bones of it, bringing the idea to life, and then you get to a point where you bring in persons, collaborators, and partners. So this is, you know, in fact, what I would consider an unofficial PPP. And I do agree, Chris, that there is work for us to do as the JTDA to determine how we can create more of these types of ends-like solutions to solve some of the problems that we have as we move towards becoming a more digital economy. Now, one of the things that I did want to do very quickly before we moved into the mix, which is the last few minutes of the conversation, is I wanted to kind of show, you know, the distinction between where it started and where it is today. So as an MVP, or maybe this was still prototype, I think this was MVP. I remember that Chris sent a screenshot of the first time that you guys were using it, where it was literally just a list of a couple of people, and it literally just said e-commerce directory listing. It didn't have all of these little buckets that you could then, you know, go down the little paths and have the UI and UX in place to guide you along the way. But it began solving the problem at this stage, right? And when you look at the system now, so if you go to ends.gov.jm, which I talked to the guys about SEO yesterday, because it is actually quite tricky to find on its own. So we need to get some SEO people. Real decoy, Jeff, that's your Arizona genius. We need to get some SEO on it, right?
You may have some challenges with that because of some of the fencing on that, but we'll see. Jeff may be able to
okay. All right, cool. So now what you can see, guys, is that it's fully functional, and when you, fully functional, and when you actually go to the different places, you go to e-commerce providers, this is kind of what Andrew was referring to just now. So you have a directory listing of all the different e-commerce solution providers that are available for processing the different transactions. So you have Sagicor, WiPay, QMall, NCB is on there, QuickPlate is on there. So you have several different avenues that you can use from an e-commerce perspective, right? And of course, when you are interested in finding out more information, you can always go to FAQs. And as with anything else, which we're going to talk about some of the myths, I won't deep dive into the FAQs, but I think some of this may have come from the media, because there's been a lot of media coverage about what is ENDS and you know, what it means, who can sign up, what is required, which I think is one of the things that we're going to discuss right now. And then in true MVP style, or pilot stage style, I would say, because we're past the MVP at this point. In true pilot style, we have limited availability up until, and I don't know when the next release is coming out. You guys can probably guide that. But as at this point, you can be in any one of 3 parishes to utilize the ENDS system. So it can be the Portmore, which is where the initial launch was done. So this was where the MVP test was executed. I actually remember thinking to myself, okay, I wonder if ENDS is anywhere but Portmore at one point in time, because I wanted to order something for dinner. And then we were joined by St. Andrew and St. James. So what we're looking towards is where this entire island will be red, because you'll be able to go to any parish. It may have a different look and feel, and you know, it's available cross country. But this kind of gives you a sense, guys, of what we're talking about when we talk about innovation in motion. Is that it started in a small way with just literally, you know, a list of stores, and now you can actually go on and see different e-commerce providers. You can see, you know, different places where the solution is available. And you can, of course, go and order your pan chicken, which I'm not going to do because I'm running out of time. So I'm going to move on now to the myth busters. I think I had a question in Q&A that was answered. by Larren. The question was, isn't the concept of N something that should be replicated throughout the region? And Larren said, for sure, in his opinion, and I think everybody on this panel would agree with him. And I believe that some things like Ns and probably other solutions like this are things that we can take Caribbean-wide, because we're small, right? We're not a very big region in terms of the number of people. I think there's what, 40 million across the region. So we really can collaborate and bring solutions like this across the region, in my humble opinion as well. All right, so let's move on to some of the myth busters. I like this part. One of the main misunderstandings, which you kind of raised a little earlier, Chris, that came about was that the government was building a competing platform with some existing providers. And this, when I say existing providers, I'm specifically talking about those providers who were already delivering food. So food service providers who already have their own independent platform. Can we talk about that myth as a first one?
Yes, so very earlier on, when the chairperson of the cabinet subcommittee made the decision to use Portmore as the beta site, I think Larren might have been the person to make the call, but a number of calls were made to the various existing players to find out if they have any, and I'll just use the word loosely, had any assets in, that's what the military talk, assets. You know, if they had any assets in in the Portmore area. And of course, not revealing too much as to what you're doing, the answer was no. And you literally call everyone, do you have an asset? No, nothing in Portmore. And then, you know, plan B occurred with the bringing in the Get There technology, which is inspired by Uber Eats, to try to see how would that work. And that night when we did our first ever test, we were trying to get that part working. I ordered, as Sheldon said, he ordered. Yes, it took a little long to get to Kingston 8 from Portmore, but the technology worked. I didn't speak to anybody. I pressed the button, I ordered, and I waited, and chicken arrived. So we proved the concept that very first weekend. And somehow, that's when the machinery, let's call it the media, wants to find out more, because the Prime Minister made a statement on his address to the nation around this concept, and everyone got bent out of shape. We had one cohort of financial services people calling, believing that, again, this is something that's competing with their business. And then there's another cohort of delivery providers calling, believing this is competing with their business. And of course, there's another cohort of people calling about, you know, they're hearing that, well, how come this one player? Because what happens is that because WiPay is involved there, and WiPay has something called WeShops, there's a question about how is this business out of another country, and we have existing businesses here that does the same thing, and I have to kind of say, stop, pause. This organization is assisting in this area. They're helping with development. You do development? Oh, you say can help us with that then? Well, these guys are helping us with that, right? And so the other component, let me just add to the end, you know, is that you had to have a communication plan, which officially wasn't there, but we kind of make it happen. And first, they stuck it on my head, as myself and Keith Duncan were the, in business, they call it the executive sponsors for the project. That they said, okay, Chris, you're the one that should talk to the media. And so I tried my very best to have one message, one answer, and repeat the same thing over and over again, to ensure that people didn't get bent out of shape. And I think for the most part, it settled down some constituents, but not all. But yeah, so that's two myths in one that we had to try to keep overcoming.
Did you mention the payment solutions? Because Larren, I think when initially, if I remember, we were watching when we were having the meeting about the proposed idea, the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals, for those who are wondering what BHAG is. Wasn't there a payment component that was there, but it was always aligned with the e-commerce provider? Was that, I don't remember. So
it initially, like very initial, yes, but then, you know, we decided that the government shouldn't get involved in e-commerce, and it's not something that a space that they should play in. and that there were existing e-commerce providers who we should leverage. So, and you know, back to what Chris was saying, the misconception came about that WiPay was the sole e-commerce provider, which definitely was not the case. WiPay is a software development company, and they came on board as a software development company. Right now we have, I mean, I remember reaching out to the logistics providers and the e-commerce providers. You know, QMall came on board and they added some people for us when we wanted to pilot in Portmore. The banks came on board. Sobeys stores out of Montego Bay did a lot of work on the ground. So, you know, it's again back to the point of inclusivity and equity. Very, very important to ensure that every person or every person desirous of being on the platform can be on the platform as long as they meet the requirements.
I want to add something.
Okay,
there.
and Sheldon, I would love if you could speak to requirements, or maybe Chris would chime in on that. But since Larren mentioned it, once they can meet the requirements, that would be good to follow.
Yeah, no, I say when Chris, I just want to tell you, when Chris at least asked other providers if they have any assets in Portmore, and I said no. I think, yes, we would have had those who have been a part of the planning and giving of time would have an idea of what we're wanting to create. But what would have happened as well, I mean, we all know each other outside from the alliance or whatever it is, outside of this project. So you're going to look to people who you believe and know that can deliver. Now, I remember talking to Kibwe, and as a Kibwe, you know, says pan chicken man have a sign for the weekend. You know, we're not trying to go in a high end. It's them need the help. And Kibwe look at me and say, Shelly, you're going down to Portmore to sign up pan chicken man? And then I keep my mouth quiet. I said, no, man, I can't own all of the chicken, right? And, you know, Kibwe went down there, and these are, we said to ourselves, look, these are people who probably don't even have a bank account, right? Don't probably familiar with any taking orders via website or anything like that. So understand that there was real work involved to sign up people who did not have any form of experience with e-commerce, right? Now, fortunately, the pan chicken men that we chose actually had bank accounts, but we actually had, I think where JMB was willing to sign them up and give them an account very quickly if they didn't, right? They had some requirements that they didn't have, like maybe the food permit wasn't up to date. And one said, look, you're going to have to get your food permit up to date. But we had to handhold them to get them on, right? And we also had to find people like Chris who was willing to buy chicken from them during the pilot, because anyhow we have them working late, cooking the chicken, and don't have orders, the thing would have flopped. So it costs us as well just to make sure that them get orders. Now, end of the day, it's not many people will be willing to go through all of that to get this thing going, right? It's a lot of work. And it maybe people think, oh my God, these people are getting some advantage. Well, we were really working hard. So what little advantage you may see that we have gotten is like we paid back for it by really going out there and signing up a lot of people, which as Chris said, it's actually open to everybody. It actually is open to everybody. But somebody has to be willing to start this thing, to go out there and do the work to get it going.
Remember the first night, Sheldon ordering the chicken, and going outside, meeting the guy. It's a Portmore taxi, and because that's when we were using the taxis. And I took a picture, sent it to the Prime Minister and said, look, the project, the beta, the test has worked. I ordered online, and the chicken's delivered. A little late, but it's delivered, and my family's enjoying it. And he was very happy to hear that and said, okay, let's make this thing happen. And then the rest of the story is being told here. Everyone, really and truly dive in, and we pull out all the stops. And as was said, some people don't even know each other, but there's this general trust and understanding that we have this goal that we're going to just make work. And so when the naysayers and the calls and the various myths, and you have myth creators, you have myth busters, but you have the people who just I mean, you go on social media, I don't hang out there too much. I'll post a picture of exercise and then I'll leave it alone. But when people say I have to do screenshots and send it to you, you're like, you're surprised that people are actually saying these things out there. And so that drove a lot of the FAQs because we had to start answering all of those questions. And then that is when, you know, Sheldon talked about us getting a project manager, you know, and our analysts start put together answers to these questions. Because for those of us who are entrepreneurs who have built a business or 2 or 3, you understand that if you don't own the narrative of what's going on, somebody else does. And you have to try to get ahead of it. But when you have a zero budget situation, right, and there's no communication or no PR consultant, trust me, you know, I saw Professor, well, yeah, Dr. Sean Thorpe a while ago make a suggestion about this is a use case for something, and I think it is. And this is something that definitely can inform how government can solve a problem. You know,
on that point, you know, I just want to say that I really hope and believe that this can and should be the catalyst for the cultural shift that we need in Jamaica for to shift to the digital economy. You know, 85% of all transactions are cash based, and we need solutions and initiatives like this that will you know, foster that movement, because it is absolutely critical for everybody island-wide to get on board with something like this that will spur the digital economy.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so we are at the end. Oh, I do have a couple of questions, and yes, Roger, we actually did talk quite a bit about development, but I'll throw the questions out there just so that we can get them answered. Since this is the MVP, which was really the question that I had next, what does success look like in 9 months for ENDS besides horizontal expansion? So if each of you on the panel could just chime in on the question, you know, what's next for ENDS?
Let me just do a quick high-level overview because I had long talks to the minister about this. In one media interview, one reporter was trying to push me into a corner to say something about post-COVID versus now. The system was originally designed to allow the registration of compliant businesses to operate during curfew. That is it, right? Now, with so much effort going into it, I don't know who has a crystal ball here to figure out how much longer we're going to be in this curfew situation. If we look at the Spanish flu, it was a 3-year thing. We're a year and a half or almost now. So maybe we'll have another year and a half to go. Who knows? With all the technology, we still can't solve certain problems. So this is going to continue. But the question keeps coming up, what after this, right? So to answer the question about nine months or a year down the line, island-wide, right? It needs to be island-wide. But more importantly, remember, the Prime Minister does have a digital objective. We all, as part of Jamaica Technology and Digital Alliance, we all have some Go Digital objectives, right, Sheldon, with your other project with PSOJ, right? So we are all out there putting out and trying to, this is a catalyst. This is a massive catalyst for people to go digital. We all here, and a number of folks, the 30 people that are here on the call, a fair percentage of us are in the space to provide digital solutions. So what we need to just do is use this as a catalyst. So I think the critical success is the fact that it is expanded, and we help those small, those micro, because there's really a lot of micro and small people to actually go digital, and that's what it will be doing. And this, my discussion with the minister was, hey, this is now would be a transition to the directory of businesses that are digital in Jamaica, ultimately. So that's my 2 cents on it. Unofficial 2 cents, I may say.
All right.
Well, the long term.
Sorry, Sheldon. And there's a lot of possibilities now with the government announcing the central bank digital currency for and e-platform. So there'll be you know, the use cases and stuff can increase with some of those coming on.
yeah, the long term for ends is that even in non-curfew hours, we expect businesses to understand the importance of going digital, because Larren, actually, like we say, you want to, in times of COVID, you want to be more moving goods and services and people. So here it is now that, I mean, if you're, because of the curfew, you're forced to get online. But even in non-curfew hours, we want to limit the amount of people that are actually on the road, have the need to go out there and to shop. So I see ends certainly being expanded to more supermarkets. So if, you know, when we have maybe another long weekend where they have curfew starting at 2 o'clock, you could be ordering from supermarkets, you could be ordering from, having your prescriptions filled from pharmacies. Possibly people can get into home improvement and ordering from a hardware store, you know, lumber, steel, and, you know, you have more time because you're at home. So we expect that a fair percentage of business is now are going to convert to having digital as one of their channels. And, you know, it will continue to have a positive impact, not only during curfew, but otherwise.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anybody have anything to add to that?
So the initial, like I said, what ends is now is a small percentage of the initial BHAG, right? So, you know, our initial presentations, if we were to go back to it, has a lot of other components to it, right? So understanding the two very important barriers to entry for the most vulnerable, digital literacy and the unbanked and the underbanked, right? We spent a lot of time looking at those two problems and how to solve them, right? So we would have met with, are they called a multinational, Chris? We met with a potential sponsor who would sponsor digital literacy programs through iCreate and EduFocal for the taxi drivers who would be getting orders, and all of the riders, and also the vendors, right? We've also met with spoken to the telcos about zero rating the applications as well, so that, you know, when we get down to the corner shop level and those people who I'm really passionate about getting on board, you know, ensuring that they without data can access the platform. And then also we met with several players in the fintech space and banks, etc., about like when we met with the JBA and even with the deputy governor at the BOJ about, you know, lower KYC and what that would mean, so that we can bring these individuals who aren't banked or who are underbanked into the ecosystem, give them at least a prepaid card or something, so that they can accept and receive payments. And then backing that up with the digital literacy component, you know, showing them how to, you know, teaching them about e-commerce, how to accept payments, etc., to remove those barriers to entry and things that these individuals certainly would have reservations about. So definitely, I think, you know, what happened was that it kind of took off more than we honestly thought it would, or I thought it would. In the pilot in the first weekend, I remember Panchikin Man from Obey calling me and literally bawling, because he did, I think, $50,000 in that weekend in sales, right? And so appreciative of that initiative. So it took off, and, you know, we're still in pilot, but there's so much more to this. You know, the curfew passport aspect of it can be used to issue, you know, when the entertainment industry opens back up, we could use that same model to issue temporary passports to those in the entertainment space to operate on a night, you know. So it's very broad, and, you know, I definitely think that we have the backing of the government for sure, and the population and the people to take it as far as we can go beyond curfew, beyond COVID.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you so much. We have a lot of congrats. Wade Mar wrote in and said, what else have you done to make, what you have done is to make digital real to a critical element of our society, which is so very true. and hence this will be a catalyst. So that is actually very, very important. Sheldon answered, there was a question there about from Roger that said he may have missed it earlier, but which company actually did the software development for the platform. Sheldon has one answer. WiPay did the first version of the software development. My answer, Roger, is the system was developed by a collaboration of developers. Early development in the first couple of weeks was done by WiPay. Aldwyn, the CEO, was on earlier. Following that, the platform dev work towards launching the MVP and pilot has continued with eGov, Real Decoy, and Symptai, specifically around security and testing. So, so I think we have actually answered a ton of maybe questions out there today. And I hope that persons now have a bit more clarity on the evolution of the solution. I did not intend for that to rhyme. And we are really looking forward to seeing what else we can bring to the market to support the movement forward of a digital economy. So I want to thank everybody that attended, and I want to say a special thank you to all my panelists. I want to say thanks so much to Sheldon Powe. I'm saying your names in the order in which I'm seeing you on the screen. To Sheldon Powe from Innovate 10X, to Christopher Reckord from tTech, Andrew Nooks from Symptai, and Larren from BlueDot, and also Aldwyn, who was on earlier from WiPay, and Jeff from Real Decoy, who was in the chat quite a bit. I just want to say thank you guys, really on behalf of the Alliance and the wider society for this massive effort that has yielded really amazing success. And I encourage everybody to order from ENDS, use up the platform. It's ends.gov.jm, and you can find them by typing in that URL online. So thanks so much, everybody, for attending, and I'll see you on another JTDA Community Forum. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
bye.
Bye-bye.